Well, howdy there, folks. Welcome back to Routing 101, a comprehensive look at the route phase by me, ID Jester. Thanks for checking out my video. Hopefully you enjoyed this series here. We're kind of winding down. I'm thinking maybe this episode, maybe one more, and we should have routing pretty much completed and done for everyone out there that's having some issues. Just to look back, if we look at just our highlighted. If we look back at our previous series, you can kind of look and see the most important things. So if we just look at the pink sections here, broken units must route away attacker first. There's 6 movement factors. They're going to move to the nearest building or wood hex and may never route towards a known enemy unit. So that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Obviously, we talked about all the things in green and yellow, but obviously kind of the pink or purple section here is the most important part. We've done a good job of kind of analyzing each of these little factors. Now we're going to be talking a little bit more about direction of the route and upon reaching your destination here. So, direction of the route. As long as it reaches the hex during a single route phase. It need not use the shortest route, but as long as it follows the shortest path and movement factors otherwise. It may enter a hellhole entrenchment, a pillbox to avoid interdiction, even if it can no longer reach the woods or building hex in a single route phase. A routing unit can route into or out of or within a known minefield or FFE at its option, but is not forced to do so merely to reach the closest building or woods hex. And that's a lot of, this whole part of it is kind of important, but it's hardly ever comes into play. So it's not ultra important. Obviously, it's something to talk about and keep in mind anytime you're using hellholes, entrenchments, or pillboxes, or having to go through minefields or FFE. You definitely want to remember this. But the most important part of this is if a newly known enemy prevents this, a new destination is refigured from this point. So, it doesn't really say this, but what it's trying to imply is that routing is a FLUID. Routing is a fluid situation. After every move, you should see if any new enemies alter your path. All right. So I'm going to add that in to my rule book for myself. And this is going to be ultra important too. So if a newly known enemy prevents you from going where you're supposed to be routing to, you're going to have to redesignate your position, and it's a fluid situation. So after every move, you must see if you can still continue on to where you want to route to. So if we look at our wonderful vassal module here, a lot of this doesn't come into play because you have a certain situation where the Germans are on one side of the map, the Americans are on the other side of the map, and they kind of meet in the middle, and there's not a lot of surrounding and kind of doing what we're doing here. Mostly it's going to be I'm here and you're here, and now you got to route away or choose to not route or whatever, and so you could just move back. So one of the most important things I can tell players is to try and get some of your units around the flank or getting them into position where you can get surrounds, where you have multiple directions. Because if this guy isn't here, it makes this a totally different situation. If we were to look again, for those of you just joining the series, we're ignoring all the counters on the side. The only thing we're concerned about is the ones here in the middle for our example. So obviously if this guy isn't there, then this makes it a totally different situation. Remember, leaders, whether they're armed or not, can influence route paths. So here we are. It is again, using our phase disc, it's the German is the attacker during this player's turn. So he has to route his units first. So he has a broken unit here, all right, there. So as, and this is another kind of a tip, I guess, and we're going to look at this maybe towards the end of the series, or maybe we'll talk about it now. I'm not sure when, but being a good ASL player involves obviously knowing the rules, which is ultra important, and also manipulating your opponent to do what you want him to do, not what he wants you to do, or what he wants to do, sorry. So in this situation here, we have a couple German units and we have an American unit. It's the German player's turn, so the German player knows he has got to route his units first. So the German player has quite a decision to make here, because if we look back at our rules, boop, 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 boop. Where is it? Where is what I'm looking for? It's probably up towards the top here. Here it is. All right. Where is it? Hello. Restrictions on direction. So a routing unit may never route towards a known armed enemy unit, even if that unit is broken or disrupted. Again, that's ultra important. That's why it's in purple. I should have realized that. So the German player knows the rules, and he knows that even though his unit's broken, he can alter where this guy goes just because he's a known enemy unit. Doesn't matter if he's broken or not. So the German player can use that to his advantage to force the American to go where he wants him to go. Because he's a known enemy unit, because the German player has to route first, obviously the German player could route, and he would route into this hex here if he chose to route. But he does not have to, because we looked at the rule. He's not in a clear terrain in line of sight of a known enemy unit. He is in a woods hex. If we just move this guy out of the way, just in case you're not sure, there's a woods hex. So he does not have to route. He can choose to route. He does not have to route. Obviously, he chooses to route. He's going to have to go towards the closest building or wood hex, which would be either U3 or V2. And obviously, he could not go into U3 because that would be going closer to a known enemy unit. Again, doesn't matter if he's broken or not. So he would have to go into V2 if he chose to route. This would cause some situations for the American player, which we'll look at in another situation. But again, because he doesn't have to route, he can force the American player to choose where he's going to go and route to based upon his decisions. So again, the American player might want to be over here for whatever reason, but the German player is going to be like, aha, no, I am choosing not to route. I am choosing not to route. And so obviously then I'll go to the American player, and the American player must choose to route. So what we're really looking at in this example, and I've kind of gone a little bit more in depth than I wanted to, but if a newly known enemy prevents this from happening, a new destination has to be refigured. So as the American player, it's now his turn. He must route. Why must he route? He's in a wood hex, or I'm sorry, he's in a building. Even better, he's in a building hex. Why does he have to route? Well, he's adjacent to a known enemy unit. So he has to get away. So he has to choose the closest woods and or building hex that is not closer to a known enemy unit. So his closest wood and or building hex is U3, obviously, which is right next door, but it is closer to a known enemy unit, which forces the American player to not choose U3. He must choose a different hex. So let's look at what else he can go to. He'll have to either go to S2 or T1, because these are the next closest in movement factors, 2 and 2. I'm sorry, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3. So it's either 3 movement factors to go to here or 3 movement factors to go to here. So he would have to choose one of these two hexes. Now the American player is pretty smart and knows that, oh, wait a minute, you know, I don't want to, I don't want to end up adjacent to a known enemy unit. That would be bad. So obviously he's going to choose T1. But let's say, for example, he, for whatever reason, maybe this was, maybe he didn't think or whatever. He chose S2 as his example. Oh, I'm going to go to the building hex because buildings are better than woods or whatever. And he moves into this situation right there. You can see that now, poof, there is line of sight to that unit right there. Before, there was no line of sight to that. Oops, let's try that again. There is no line of sight because the building blocks that line of sight. So this unit is not a known enemy unit. So he chooses S2, he can actually go that way. And he chooses to go there. At that point, this is now a known enemy unit, and he can no longer go in that direction. So he's going to have to recalculate and figure out where is my next nearest closest building and or wood hex that I can get to that is still valid. So he's he's 2 spaces away from the American. So he could actually choose this space in T1 and end up going there because it's not closer to a known enemy unit. But he has to recalculate and figure this out because he now sees a American unit over there that is now a known enemy unit. So he will have to go there for another movement factor and then finally into T1 to complete his route to the nearest building and or wood hex. If the American chooses S2, and he ends up going here, he's going to end up screwing himself. Because if he goes here, again, this is not a known enemy unit at this point, so he has to go to where he was going to go, which is right there, and that is going to cause a big problem. Where is it? Because I moved everything up and down. uh, all right, a rounding unit may never move adjacent to a known enemy unit, and that's in doing so, it is leaving the enemy's location. So, rounding unit may never move adjacent to a known enemy unit. Well, fortunately for the American, he doesn't know about this guy if he does this. So he goes there. This is still a non-known enemy unit. If he ends up going into this hex, oh, wait a minute, there's a known enemy unit, and then he's going to have to calculate to get away from it and end up in T1. Fortunately for him. So pretty much he's going to end up in T1 at this point. So that's kind of an example of direction of the route. The most important thing, again, you don't have to necessarily go into minefields or FFEs. You can, you must choose the shortest path in movement points or movement factors, sorry, and you can enter hellholes or entrenchments or pillboxes to avoid interdiction as well. All right, so now we're going to get on to upon reaching your destination. What happens when you actually get to where you're going? Upon reaching a destination, a building or wood location not adjacent to a known enemy unit, that's important. I'm going to put that in yellow. A routing unit must stop and end its route, even if it overstacks, unless the unit can directly enter another building woods location in its next entered hex. And it does not necessarily have to be the same continuous woods or building. And I'll put that in yellow because that's pretty important. Exception, a broken unit in a building need not consider a hex of the same building in which it begins its route phase as the closest building, as it prefers to route out of the building altogether and towards another building would hex, even if it must cross open ground, blah, 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 blah. So we'll put that all in yellow because that's pretty important. A routing unit may also ignore a building or wood hex if that hex is no farther from no enemy unit than its starting hex, even if it must route through that now ignored building hex location to reach its destination. So what does that mean? Okay, let's take an American unit. Ha! All right, and let's see. What can we do to kind of give you an example here? Let's just move that guy out of there. That's fine. Let's bring in a couple units here. Sure, like this and like that. No, like that. There we go. Might be a good example. Sure. Is that a good example? Well, let's see. Trying to think of a good example here for you guys to show you. So basically what that means is, oh yeah, here, we'll go back up to our other example. I'll show you the building one here in a second, but let's bring back our broken American unit we just had over here. There we go. We have the same situation. Just move these units out of the way for a second. Same situation. German player's turn. He's the attacker. He chooses no, I'm not going to route. American player must route. He chooses S2, goes into this space and realizes there's a known enemy unit, recalculates to T1. So he spent one movement factor to go there, he spent his second movement factor to go there, and he spends two more movement factors to move into T1. He has spent four movement factors. Remember, you have 6 movement factors when you're routing. So he can actually move into another adjacent woods and or building hex if he wishes. If he has the movement factors to go in there and, abides by all the rules of not moving closer to a known enemy unit, blah, blah, blah. So he can actually spend 4 movement factors to move in there. He can spend another 2 movement factors to move into that hex because it's adjacent. It does not have to have an adjacent tree line like this. For example, you could have something like, let's see if we have any examples on the map. Here we do. All right, so here we go. So this unit here, again, we're just going to concentrate on just these 3 units right here. Actually, no, we'll just concentrate on just these 2 units right here. Just these 2 units, ignore everything else. So the American player must route because he's adjacent to a known enemy unit. So during his route, he chooses the closest building and or woods, which obviously is going to be either Y7 or Z5. You cannot choose Z5 because it would be moving adjacent from an adjacent space to an enemy to another adjacent space. Cannot do that. So he must choose Y7. So he spends 2 movement factors to go there. Now he may, this is kind of a bad example. Let's go back. There we go. That's an even better situation. There we go. All right, so again, just these 2 units. American player chooses to route. He can choose to go into Z5, Y6 are his 2 choices because they're not closer to a known enemy unit. He does not have to route, but he chooses to route. He spends 2 movement factors to go into Y6. Notice there is no connection between these 2 forest hexes or woods hexes. He can choose to spend 2 more. Now that he's reached his destination, he can choose to enter into an adjacent building and or wood hex if he wishes at the cost of 2 movement factors, as long as he abides by all of his, the situations. He can spend 2 more movement factors to go there. So he spent a total of 4 movement factors, and then he can choose to move into Z7. Again, it does not have to have connection like Y8 and Z8, where there's woods to woods. You don't have to do that. Same thing for the buildings. If the American player was here, he has to route. Again, just concentrate on just these two units. The other ones just ignore at this point. Uh, there we go. So just ignore them. Just these two units. The American player must route because he's adjacent. He has to choose either W5 or Y5 as his destination hex. He chooses Y5 and goes into that hex. He can then, for 2 movement factors, he could then move into this building in Z5 for 2 more movement factors for a total of 4 movement factors. Even though the buildings are not connected, it's not a multi-hex building or anything like that. It doesn't have to be like that. They don't have to be like this O6 and P6 where it's like one building connecting. It doesn't have to be, the woods don't have to be connecting like this. And you can also do multiple woods and or hexes as well. So again, same situation. He can route for 2 movement factors into the building, and then route 2 movement factors into the woods, and then route 2 movement factors in the woods again. So as long as it's a continuous line of buildings and or woods, you can spend those movement factors to get away from your enemy, obviously. You have to abide by all the situations we talked about up to this point, but that is a way to do that. All right, so that's that. And finally, about the buildings, if you're in a building, you can choose to ignore the building let's see the way they phrase it here. A broken unit in a building need not consider a hex of the same building in which it began its route phase as the closest building. Okay, so you can ignore this if you want to. You can choose to ignore this as the closest building or woods hex that you need to go to. So if you want to, again, you can choose to ignore this. And of course, if it's multiple stories, you can move up and down, move up or down inside a building as long as it's a stairways. But if you're in this, you can choose to ignore this for your designation of where is the closest building and or wood hex. So in this case, let's say the German player was here. If that rule wasn't implied, or if you didn't have that rule, then the American player would have to go there because it's the closest building and or woods hex. But maybe the American player doesn't want to go there. So because of this rule, he can choose to ignore this, which means he can then he can choose B7 as his closest building and or wood hex, or he could choose N5 as his closest building and or woods hex, or he could choose O5 because again, he's not moving closer to a known enemy unit. This is 2 spaces away. This is 2 spaces away as well. So he can choose to ignore this if you want. If you're in a hex with a multi-story building, you cannot choose to ignore it if you are not in the building. Notice it says you must start the broken unit in a building need not consider a hex of the same building in which it begins the route phase. So you have to start inside the building to be able to ignore that building for your route if you wish to. Again, this is up to the routing player's decision whether or not he wishes to do that. All right, so just a few other minor rules, or probably not minor rules. I mean, they're all important rules, but we're probably going to go over them in the next episode. Not having a valid destination, what happens? Because you must choose a building within 6 movement factors, a building in or wood hex. What happens if you don't have a valid destination? Again, we're going to go over low crawl. We're going to go over interdiction. I know we've talked about some of these throughout the series, but we're going to go over again. Just a refresher on the open ground. What happens if you have concealment? What can you do How does that come into play? And I know we talked about this before the voluntary route as well. But before we end this episode, let's look at a situation here. Hopefully I didn't mess it all up. I did. All right. Let's move that guy out of the way. Let's move this guy out of the way. So for this situation, we're going to take a few of the things we learned about. The only things that come into play are all these two units, and my unit here as the American player who's being surrounded by a bunch of Germans, and I have to find a way to get out of there and not be surrounded out in the open and killed by the German player. So we're going to take a couple of the rules and all the things that kind of we learned about to figure out if there's a way to do that. So again, it is the ignore. It doesn't matter. We'll just say it's the American player's turn. Normally it's the German. That's all right. We'll just say it's the German player's turn. Just ignore that phase disk. We'll delete that. Delete. There we go. So again, it's the German player, the attacker. He doesn't have any broken units. He's got me surrounded out in the middle of the open. He's laughing at me, going, ha ha ha. We've got you now, American. You are so screwed. All right, well, let's find out if we can find a way to get out of this situation, shall we? So, first things first, we have to choose whether or not, or we have to decide whether or not we have to route or not. We are in R5 here. We are within normal range and line of sight of an enemy unit. And I'm going to change this out for a second here. We want to clone this guy. There we go. So there we go. So we are within the normal range and line of sight of enemy units. So, and we're out in the open, so we must route. There's no decision, so we must designate the closest building and or hex, woods hex, as our safe haven. We have to choose either R2, S3, or U4 as our routing hex, because they're all four movement factors away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? Why can I choose these buildings as our safe haven, as our route destination? Well, because of the rules, we know that we cannot see R1. We do not know this is a unit. Doesn't matter to us that he's there because we cannot see him. Also, we have one in, what is that, T1. So let's make sure we don't have line of sight to T1. No, it's covered by the building. Covered by the building. So we do not know that those guys are there. They're hidden behind. We know about these guys because we've got clear line of sight. So we have to get away from them, right? So we're going to choose our destination hex. We're going to choose S3 here as our destination hex. And we are going to move one movement factor to go there. At that point, let's look at we can now see the unit in T1. Actually, let me go back. I did that wrong. We're going to go into R4. I'm sorry. We're going to go to R4 first. That's right. So when we move into R4, right? We move into R4, we can be interdicted by our enemy, can't we? No, we cannot be interdicted by our enemy. Because they can only shoot up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. So they don't get any interdiction. The German players cursing at us. Curse you. So we're still headed to S3. We have spent several movement factors to get there. We do not see that unit there. And we do not see this unit there. Correct? Yes, correct. All right, good for us. So we spent one movement factor. Again, these guys are still unknown enemies to us. So we spent one movement factor to go there. We now will spend another movement factor, being smart that we are, and we're going to go right there. Why would we want to go there as opposed to going here? Well, if we go there, we're going to now know about this guy, I believe. Yes, we're going to know about this guy, which is going to force us not to go to these hexes. We don't want to know about um, that guy at this point. We want to go right here because we have to find a way to get out of this mess that we've gotten ourselves into. So when we go, again, we started here, we spent a movement factor to go here. We don't know about these guys yet. When we go here, I believe we now see one another. Oh, no, we don't see one another. But more importantly, we do see this guy now, I think. Nope. Oh, we still don't know about that guy. Well, shimmer me timbers. That didn't work out as well as I was hoping for. Yeah, I was thinking I could see them, but I guess I cannot see them. All right, well, just because these buildings are blocked. Anyways, then we end up routing into that hex right there, and we are done with our route. It didn't work out exactly as I was going to plan. Hmm. Uh, all right, well, let's try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4. There we go. All right, so same situation. Again, if I choose the wrong buildings or I make the wrong move, we're going to be in big trouble here, obviously. We could choose U4, because again, we can go towards these enemy units. When we route there, again, these guys can't interdict us. We don't know about these. We do know about these guys. We do know about this guy now, don't we? Yes, we do, because we moved over here. So at that point, we have to recalculate every single thing and figure out our closest building and our wood hex that's not closer to a known enemy unit. And it might be good that I know this guy now because I don't want to go that way towards him, right? Because I don't want to end up over here next to him in this building right here. I want to get the hell out of there. So at this point, I will then go and have to recalculate. So I've spent one movement factor to go there. I'm going to have to figure out where I can go. Can I go to this space now? Can I go to that space? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. Nope, because I'm 4 spaces away. This is 3 spaces away. So that would be going closer to a known enemy unit, which I don't want to do. This building's out. This building's out. That building's out. That building's out. That building's out. So it only leaves W5. W5 is our example here, because that's not closer to a known enemy unit. So I spent one movement factor. I will spend a second movement factor to go there, which is valid because I'm 5 spaces away from this guy and 5 spaces away from this guy in this space. And I didn't go any closer to this guy. 1, 2, 3, 4 from where I was. 1, 2, 3, 4 from where I'm at. Perfect. I spent my second movement factor to move in there. I will spend my third movement factor to move there. Again, valid. Can they? 2, 3, 4, 5. Nope. Outside their range. Outside their normal range. No interdiction required. I don't know if I can see that guy yet. Nope. Still can't see that guy. I spent my fourth movement factor to move there. At that point, I might actually see that guy. Nope. Still. Yes, I see him now. So when I go into this X, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm 6 spaces away from this guy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yes. All right. So I now see this guy. So he can alter my path because he's now a known enemy unit. So I have to recalculate or figure out if I can still end up going to my location that I have designated. At this point, he is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 spaces away. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can still continue going there. So 4 movement factors to get to there, and finally 2 more movement factors to move into that building and or wood hex and get out away and had no interdictions from the enemy. Again, when I moved, so we started here, we moved here. This enemy only has a range of 3, 1, 2, 3, so he can't interdict me. And even if he had a range of longer, he'd have to shoot through the orchard, so he would not be able to interdict me because of the orchard or because of his range. So I didn't have to worry about that. Again, when I moved over here, same thing, no interdiction because of that. These guys, again, no interdiction because they would be shooting, this guy would be shooting through the crops and is outside his normal range. This guy here has a clear line of sight, but I'm outside his range. We move into this space, same situations going on. Finally move into this space. This guy can see us, but outside his normal range, even though he would have a clear shot, he might be going through a little bit of crops there anyways, so he wouldn't get his interdiction. And finally into that space, safe and secure, home for the holidays, enjoying a cup of tea in the house, laughing at all the Germans, going, ha ha ha, you thought you had me, but no, I got away. But without knowing all the rules and figuring out and calculating this ahead of time and saying to yourself, where do I want to end up? Not where does the enemy want me to end up. If I just start, if I choose one of these 2 hexes and just move up like I did in the first example, I'm going to end up in one of these 2 hexes. And then what's going to happen is when the Germans get to advance, he's going to advance over here, he's going to advance over here. We're going to be in a world of hurt. So I don't want to end up over here somehow. But of course, because they're my closest building and our woods, I'm going to, be in trouble. So obviously the best situation for me is choosing U4, which is the same amount of movement factors away. The problem is obviously we're going to have line of sight to this guy. So that's a bad thing because once I do that, then all of a sudden I am 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces away. This building happens to be 3 spaces away, which makes me go, no, I can't make it to that building. No, I can't, which is actually good for us because we want to end up way over here, away from all these guys, give us a chance to rally and do everything that we need to do to get back in the fight. So knowing the rules, understanding the rules, and being able to apply them to your units that route and get out of these situations that your enemy's putting you into is very, very important. So hopefully you learned a few things. Again, we'll come back in the next episode. I think that's what I had designed to begin with, was this little scenario here. And I messed up by going the wrong square, which caused me to have to go up here and then end up here in the first example, which I didn't want to do. I don't want to do. But once you start this path, I'm screwed. There's nothing I can do. I can go, here, right? And then, do I know about these guys? Nope. I don't know about that guy. Let's try this guy. Oh, I know about this guy. At that point, if I go there, which makes me have to calculate out where I can go, which means I'm going to have to go way over to this hex, or this building here, because it's not closer to a known enemy unit, and then I would have to end up going there. Which, let's see where the better situation is. Ending up here in this hex or ending up here? Which would you rather do? And obviously, based on the rules and what you understand of the rules, these 2 are going to be, one of these 2 will be your finishing hex based upon all the rules we learned. Which one is a better spot for yourself? Well, that's based upon, where else the rest of your units are. But I can guarantee that when the German player gets his advance, he's going to advance right there. He's going to keep us under our DM counter, and then we're going to have to advance back out in the open. All kinds of bad things are going to happen. So I'd much rather be over here in this building. I'm way away from these guys as well, so that's always a good thing. But that's for another decision, or another discussion, I guess. So that's direction of the path. Direction of the route and the path you must take, and what happens upon reaching your destination. Again, most important thing about reaching your destination is the wilderness. Yeah, that's not what I meant to say. The buildings or the woods don't have to be connected through the hex side or anything like that. They just have to be adjacent. So again, if I start here, I have to route. I could spend 2 movement factors to go in the building, 2 more to go in the woods, 2 more to go in the woods. That's 6 movement factors. None of them are connected in the hex side, but as long as they are adjacent and I'm following all the rules that I have to follow, then I am good to go. So again, you can do that. If we go up here to the top, where our American unit, where did our American go? Hello, there you are. If he was here, force him to leave. He spends 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and that's as far as he can go. Obviously, you can't do something like, let's say we were here. We can't go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or whatever over into the woods back here. Nope. Once you enter a building in or woods, the only thing you can ever do is stay in a building in or woods. So you can go, 2 to go there, 2 to go there, and 2 to go there, but you can't go 2, 4, 5, 6. Okay, once you're in a building or woods, you must stay, because you're trying to stay out of trouble, stay in cover, keep everyone away from you. All right, so winding up our Routing 101 here, just having a few things to talk about with valid hexes. No crawl, which we've kind of covered a little bit. Interdiction we talked about. Open grounds. Concealment, we really haven't gone into too much, but there's some funky things you can do with concealment to kind of screw over your opponent. And then, of course, I think we talked about voluntary routing with your non-berserk, non-pin leader. Can go with someone that's breaking for free. So, thanks so much for watching, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed Routing 101 Part 4. See you guys next time.